Joining us now is the president and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, Jim Holcomb, who just took over as president and CEO after succeeding former president and CEO Rich Studley. Jim, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So first, give us a little bit of a background on you. Tell us about some of your accomplishments in the past in your career and what led you to the Michigan Chamber of Commerce.
Sure. I've been in Lansing since approximately 1991. I came here as a law student and a legislative staffer. I've worked in the House. I've worked in the Senate. I've been a chief of staff for a Speaker of the House. I've been a legal counsel. I did practice law for 4 years with a mid-major firm here in Michigan. And now I've been at the Michigan Chamber for 14 years, committed to doing everything I can to help businesses in Michigan succeed. This is a real home for me. It's where my passion is, and I'm glad to be here. And Rich Studley did a tremendous job for us for 40 years here at the Chamber, and I'm excited to see where we take the Chamber into the future.
Yeah, Rich did great work with the Michigan Chamber business community here in our state. Certainly appreciated his service over several decades at the helm at the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. So now you're coming in a transition period, of course, for a transition of leadership, but also as we continue to transition from the thick of the COVID-19 pandemic into what hopefully is nearing the end of the pandemic and the post-pandemic stage, and that's an interesting place to come in as a new leader. So right now, where does Michigan's business community stand as it regards to recovery from the bulk of the COVID-19 pandemic and those challenges that they faced, and also in building a prosperous future for businesses current and oncoming in the near future?
Certainly many of our businesses across the state and Michigan Chamber members are a little battered. It's been a rough couple of years, but more importantly, they're optimistic. As you can imagine, we're constantly in conversation with our members, and we've recently surveyed them. 80% are saying that COVID is still having a negative impact on their business operations. But even with that, they see the ability of what can be. They see that they've come through the worst of it, hopefully, and hopefully we get COVID behind us from a health standpoint. But they're feeling optimistic about the state because they've learned how to be entrepreneurial. They've learned how to adapt. They've learned how to coordinate with each other. And I think one of the best things we saw is, regardless if you're a Michigan Chamber member or not, you were getting help from us during COVID. And many other organizations did the same. And it was wonderful to see Michiganders helping each other and all just trying to make sure that we had the best information, the best resources, and the ability to move our communities forward, because that's what's going to help the state. Individually, we have to strengthen our communities, and the state overall will do very well.
And so one of the key challenges that has arisen over the course of the pandemic, particularly as businesses have reopened after the shutdowns, after all the restrictions were ultimately lifted late last year or in the middle portions of last year in 2021, has been a continued issue with staffing shortages. And it's something we just recently talked about with Lisa Bain from JVS Human Services about some advice for nailing your job interview, but also talking about the state of the staffing situation across the board in the state of Michigan. Are we seeing that improving? Are there any signs of that being relieved in the future? And regardless of that situation, what are businesses in the state of Michigan doing as of now to attract that talent to come back to the workplace or new talent to come in to the workplace here in Michigan?
We're certainly seeing an improvement, but there's still a long way to go. The talent crisis and shortage is just really an impediment to growth here in Michigan. And for current businesses, just being able to operate at pre-pandemic hours is a struggle. I think if we go to any of our restaurants and bars across the state and a lot of our social outlets, it's really hard to continue to keep those hours of operations for the full day because of the staff shortage. And so they're being creative. They're trying to work cooperatively with each other. You see businesses who share staff for the people who really do want to put in the hours. You're seeing better screening on hiring, I believe, as well. So the people you're hiring are going to be a long-term employee. They're people committed to your organization and to working with each other. But I think going forward, it's going to be a continued evolution. What we're seeing, whether you call it the Great Resignation or just people reevaluating the work-life balance, employers are also having to modify their approach. We have here at the Michigan Chamber, we've gone to the option of working remote, and we're finding ways to still be productive. And in many cases, we've actually increased our efficiency, and you're seeing that in businesses across the state. But we certainly aren't out of the woods by any stretch. And it's going to take the continued entrepreneurial spirit and the flexibility of job providers to really get back to where they were. But I think we'll not only get back to where we were, we're going to be better, and in the future, we're going to be stronger for it. Nobody wished the pandemic upon anyone, but we're learning a lot of good lessons, and I think we're having a good rebalance of a work-life balance, and employers and employees working together, not only to keep themselves safe, to keep their customers safe, to make sure their businesses are strong operations.
And it seemed like for a while there was a bit of a clash between employers that were looking to fill these positions and potential employees, either those that had previously been furloughed or had been laid off or had stepped away during the thick of the pandemic and had then said they weren't going to come back for one reason or another. You mentioned many of them: work-life balance, wage issues, demands or requests for better benefits or benefits altogether. And now we're seeing a little bit of a shift where there is that flexibility in those negotiations from the businesses to potential employees and from potential employees to the businesses as well. What advice have you, as your organization, been giving to businesses, or what have members of your Chamber of Commerce found to be the ways that they've had to modify their approach to hiring new staff, to finding that new talent, to adjust to this new paradigm while also modifying their business plan so that they're able to operate as normal and successfully as possible despite these current challenges?
Yeah, I think the best practice, what we've seen, is just better communication in the hiring process, better communication in training and onboarding your staff, better communication in how you evaluate staff. I think the more that employers and employees talk, the better the operations of the organization. And we're seeing that pan out. People are becoming more efficient because they're sharing their best practices, not only with other organizations, but more importantly, internally. I know I've just conducted a staff survey here, and I'm meeting one-on-one with all of our employees just to figure out, okay, what's working, what's not, where can we improve? We have a very strong culture here and a culture of being open and honest. I think the more that employers adopt that, it's going to help them. But the point you referenced earlier that I think is absolutely the most important, it's employers and employees discussing how to do this. The government top-down mandates don't work. It's not a one-size-fits-all, whether we're talking about what to do with masks, what to do with vaccines, or how to run your day-to-day operations. Businesses operate the best when they're collaborative internally, and government, unfortunately, too often gets in the way and puts up a needless hurdle.
And what we're seeing, too, that's really nice, and you mentioned the opportunities for better training, for advancement, for changing directions if people decide that they need a change, or they'd like a change, or they'd like to challenge themselves in a different way within a company, whereas before it was very rigid. If you wanted to make that change, you had to undergo that training on your own time. It could take years. It could take a lot of money to get that retraining. And now we've seen these businesses say, we want to keep you on our staff while we train you to transition somewhere else and while you help to train somebody to take over your position. And that brings me to some of the great opportunities that are going to be coming into Michigan in the near future. We heard about the $7 billion investment that General Motors is making in the state of Michigan for building electric vehicles and for building batteries for electric vehicles as well. And so there's great opportunity also coming to the state of Michigan. How does that opportunity for changes in the paradigm of different industries, especially critical industries like the automotive industry in the state of Michigan, help to aid that change that you've mentioned in training and in advancement in a company that's been so critical to maintaining your employee base and retaining staff long term?
Yeah, whenever we can get great new expansion here in Michigan, it's a wonderful thing, not only for the businesses that are doing it, but all the ancillary businesses. Yeah. And as you said, in training, technology is just changing our lives so rapidly. And when you can have an employee train another employee, it's just wonderful because they're already cooperative. They're already embrace the culture of the company. But also what you were saying before, just making sure, the right people are in the right seats. You can have a great employee who's fairly competent at their job, but they don't enjoy it. How much better is it to find that place in the organization where they truly love what they're doing and they're actually more productive? And it just helps everybody get along better. And then you have the circular impact back to having the work-life balance. The best thing we can do, I think, as employers is make sure that our employees are not only the best employee, but we set them up to be the best brother, the best husband, the best volunteer baseball coach. If you're happy at your job, you're a better participant in your community. And I truly believe that more that we can help our employees be great participants in the community, everybody's going to benefit. Because we are all in this together. And we need to just make sure that we're taking the opportunity when you have something like Jim, and what a wonderful investment and a great company coming in, but it also gives the state the ability to expand and keep that, not only the manufacturing talent here, but grow the intellectual talent and how much R&D can we bring into an area just to make sure that Michigan is always on the cutting edge. We just have to embrace the change and not be scared of it.
We're joined by Jim Holcomb. He is the president and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, joining us on the MegaCast. And last night, Jim, Governor Gretchen Whitmer made her final State of the State address of her current term in office. What were some of the parts of what she had said last night, or some of the topics she spoke about, such as taxes in particular, additional funding that may be placed for businesses for recovery? What were some of those key parts that she touched on last night that particularly garnered your attention and the chamber's attention going forward, as Michigan, the state government and local government as well, going to have to be a key part in aiding our businesses recovering from all of the damage and all of the challenges, more so, that they experienced during the pandemic?
I really appreciated the governor's tone last night. I think one of the biggest impediments we have to progress here in Michigan and across the country is just kind of the snarky nature that politics has become. It's about tweets and a press release and not real debate. And the more that Republicans, independents, Democrats, everybody sits down and actually debates and discusses an issue, the better we're going to be. So I appreciated that she was trying to set that tone. I would have liked to have heard more details. Anytime we can focus on job creation and increasing the work-life balance and bringing businesses to Michigan and making Michigan economically competitive, not only but in the state, but in the world, that's a great thing. But we really need to hear the details. And I'm hopeful that she'll reach across the partisan aisle, that she'll work with Speaker Wentworth and Senate Majority Leader Shirkey and really find ways that we can come together as a state. We need to fix our roads. We need to have better infrastructure. We need to make sure that there are training opportunities, that there's affordable housing, and we deal with daycare for working mothers and working parents across the state. We don't have a shortage of issues, but we do have a shortage, I'm afraid, of real debate. And I'm hopeful that we can take her speech last night that had some good themes, but really develop that in the legislative process. And, we're urging her as well as legislative leaders, put down the partisan banter and let's get together in committee rooms and find results and practical solutions to real problems.
And so one of the other forms of good news that's coming recently from the state is the revenue numbers have shown they brought in way greater numbers in revenue in the state of Michigan over the past several years. How can that extra revenue aid in the recovery of Michigan's businesses, and what goals does the chamber have in working with our leaders in Lansing, both in the legislature and in the governor's office? Should it be Governor Whitmer? Should it be somebody else in the near future after the 2022 elections, to tap into some of that revenue bonus that we've seen over the past few years to aid Michigan businesses in their recovery?
Well, I think what we need to recognize is a lot of the increased revenue is just federal dollars coming down, whether it was from borrowed money or federal taxes, and we need to treat it as such. Our goal is, what we're talking with legislators and the governor's office about, is be aggressive with the budgeting, but be smart with it. Don't create and spend dollars that create long-term debt burdens that are going to impact your budget 3, 4, 5 years down the road when all this money dries up. Let's treat this like one-time money and find those areas. Is it equipment in schools? Is it infrastructure? Is it training opportunities? Is it developing affordable housing? What can we do and almost treat this money as a one-time expenditure so we don't create a long-term burden? I'm worried that we're going to go through and this money is going to seem endless, and it's not. The money dries up, and we have to make sure Michigan is economically positioned and fiscally sound 2, 3, 4 years from now, not just get the gratification of doing some quick spending now. So there's a lot of talk about tax cuts. That's great, and the money should go back to taxpayers. But let's find the most efficient way to do that, and let's not, like I said, create a burden later. It doesn't help you to cut taxes now. In 2, 3, 4 years, you're back at the trough trying to increase taxes. Let's treat taxpayers fairly and give them the money back now without creating a long-term problem.
We're joined by Jim Holcomb, President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, on the MegaCast. Jim, a few more minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else that we haven't discussed that you would like to touch on, or any other information that Michiganders should be paying attention to as it affects our businesses?
Well, I think what Michiganders should be doing is getting more involved. I think, as we talked earlier, the nature of politics right now and the discourse is not great. That's going to change when citizens get involved, when they talk to their local elected representatives, their state senator, their state representative, and share the opinions and ideas of what's important to them as a constituent. We really need the public to bring their ideas forth because the people we elect are the ones representing us. Michigan has a great opportunity to continue the progress we're making and to have a wonderful future. We just can't waste it on partisan politics. We need to make sure we're making smart decisions, and the budget is the first place to start. That's the most important job the legislature has right now, is dealing with budget issues in the next couple months and making sure that we expend this money wisely, because it's a real opportunity we can't let slip through our fingers.
Jim, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us, introducing our local area and our community and our viewership to you and your leadership over at the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, and giving us some insight into the future that will be very interesting and critical in the next several months and several years for our business community.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate that you have the show, that you're trying to improve the discourse locally and, in our communities across the state and Southeast Michigan. It's really important, and you're doing a great job making sure these issues come to the forefront. So thanks for what you do.